Again, I extend welcome to everybody for joining us tonight. This is a good turn up. I know it is hard sometimes at 6 or 7 o'clock, wherever you are, to join at sort of dinner time. For those with kids, it can be increasingly difficult. You may hear my daughter in the background smashing chicken for our dinner, so keep going, Dom. I want to introduce to you now, or sorry, before I start, if you haven't met me before, I'm Greg. I'm the CEO of PICA. You may have seen and spoken with Paul before. I sent out an email in regards to that earlier on this month. So I want to introduce you to Jason Lawrence tonight, and I'm so excited and really grateful that Jason has agreed to come tonight and talk to you, because this is something that's quite close to my heart, and I actually do training in it as well, but we've really got an expert in this area to talk to you tonight, so I'm really grateful that he's joined us. I'll just give you a bit of a breakdown on Jason. So he has an extensive career in dealing with difficult clients. Now, anybody who's in the workforce does that daily if you're in a forward-facing role. Jason's done this his whole career, both in the military as an RAF police and later with Air Force security. He served in both permanent and reserve postings. In his first year, Jason also received a commendation from the commanding officer of his base for successfully disarming a civilian armed with a butcher's knife. So you can imagine how frightening that would be. After he left the RAAF, Jason held a variety of state government roles and still does. In those roles, for 25 years, he's worked as an investigator. So he's not just here to talk to you about tactical communications tonight, he's actually an investigator as well. Compliance, complaint handling, training, and management roles. During this time, he's led a group of investigators who are triumphant in prosecuting a company for multiple high-level fatigue driving breaches, and his team has been recognised with an Australia Day Award for their efforts. He currently holds the rank of Sergeant with the RAAF Reserves and has over 16 years' experience in the military security sector. He now delivers safety training or operational safety training to existing and new RAAF members in security squadrons. In 2010, Jason started to practice Krav Maga, I think I pronounced that right, self-defense, which I've looked at a little bit into, maybe of interest to some of you. First as a student, then he became an instructor in the tactical fighting system. That's obviously physical defense. One of his passions was and still is specialising in women's safety training. He's recently started to train in kinetic fighting integrated combat system. He might tell us a bit about that tonight. For over 5 years, Jason's managed one of the busiest client complaint intake teams in the Department of Justice and Attorney General, that's here in Queensland, handling approximately 16,000 complaints and 2,000 investigations a year. It's during this time, and no doubt before then also, he's discovered the importance of communication skills on the phone. About 3 or 4 years ago, Jason started to deliver tactical communications to frontline staff, bringing a mix of real life and structured learning experiences to people and students all across Australia. He has one mission, and that's to bring you home safely. And that's what this is all about, this tactical communication. And that's by teaching the power of situational de-escalation in combination with workplace tactical communication practices. He wants to deliver tactical communications to frontline staff because he realised that after doing 25 years in difficult roles, he'd never actually been trained in a training course on how to communicate effectively. And it's actually surprising how many government departments and other big companies don't provide training in simply how to de-escalate people. It's a massive flaw for staff involved in those types of roles. So again, I want to welcome Jason. I will hand over to him in a minute and he'll go through some stuff. Please perhaps keep your questions towards the end if you ask for questions, but by all means type them into the chat as well. This is a really interesting subject and I hope you enjoy. Anyway, Jason, thanks for joining us and welcome.
Unmute. Hope you can all hear me. Yeah, excellent. All right. Thank you very much, Greg, for inviting me along. Wow, yeah, I sound like I've done a lot of stuff when you break it down on paper and then read it back to someone. Um, yeah, look, I have had an interesting career. Some of the roles that I've done throughout my life, I've fallen into rather than probably applied for them. I had a habit probably of sticking my hand up and doing things that sometimes were outside my comfort zone. And some of the big investigations that I've done throughout my career have been very much just that. Um, that no one else wanted to give it a go. So I was lucky enough when I was in Queensland Transport Department as an inspector. I worked with a guy there who was very, very much forward thinking. He was very much like myself around just, hey, get in there, do what we have to do. And if we can set a standard for other people, then that's what we were about. Um, the fatigue management investigation that Greg mentioned, it was the second of its kind to ever be held in Queensland. They'd introduced new laws, and not to blow our own whistle, but Brisbane did the first one, and they kind of made a bit of a mess of it. So we learned from their lessons. We went in and we very successfully executed warrants. Seized all of our evidence, and then, of course, put together all of our packages, interviewing both drivers and directors of the company. It was a very successful outcome, and as Greg mentioned, because of the hard work that went into it, and it was a year's effort, locked in a room, my partner and I, going through mountains and mountains of paperwork to come up with, I suppose, a formula between ourselves and how we were going to bring it to a head, especially for the drivers and the directors that were responsible for pushing these drivers. And at the end of the day, we got, I think it was about $5,000 fines each for the two directors, and a couple of multiple $1,000 worth of fines for the drivers. And in this day and age, it's probably not a lot of money, but effectively it stamped that governments were probably a bit fed up with the driving practices of some of the drivers out there in the industry. And it did start to change some of the ways that I suppose the behaviours of the bigger companies around there as well. From there, as Greg said, it's not always about investigations. From there, we had actually companies start to contact myself and my partner and ask whether or not we'd be interested in coming out and doing education sessions. And it was completely unheard of. We had to make our director buy us a laptop and a projector so we could start to go and do them. But what it did was forged ahead for a brand reputation for Queensland Transport well and truly into the future. And as they've now, a lot of the transport compliance areas are certainly transitioning across to the National Heavy Vehicle Regulator. I'd like to think that I've played a little bit of a part in setting their standards all those many, many years ago. Greg also mentioned that I've had, I suppose, multiple compliance training roles. I was the state compliance trainer for Queensland Transport for 3 years. I ran our 6-week induction course. And I suppose because of the things that I'd seen out in the field moving forward, I was able to bring, I suppose, our failings into the classroom and say, hey, these are the things, this is the reality of what we're doing. You know, when you just pull over a truck, you're not just pulling over a truck. Have a look at what might else be able to feed in to possibly look at other breaches down the track. And always having that kind of investigative type mindset rather than just a compliance officer type mindset. So that's what I wanted to try and set with the new inspectors as they kind of rolled off the production line. I have spent roughly 16 years over in the Office of Fair Trading, multiple roles over there. I went across there originally as a senior investigator. I spent a year there, basically on a task force looking at unlicensed motor dealers. Basically, they were criminals selling really crappy cars out the back of our Logan area down here in Brisbane. No warranties, no, odometers being wound back and so forth. And so I worked in conjunction with the police and other transport inspectors and Office of Fair Trading staff to prosecute a fair few rogue operators out of the back of those areas. But what I also learned during that time is, and the big emphasis of what I teach now in tactical communications is You know, just because you have a badge or an authority, or, you know, you're an investigator in whatever realm you operate within, I found it's the way that you deal with people, the communication styles and so forth, and goes a long way to getting the answers out of people, rather than going in there and big noting that you know, you're here as an authority and flashing a badge and whatever. Because at the end of the day, people don't overly care if they're doing the wrong thing. I think if you can build respect with people, it goes a massive way towards being able to have that interaction with people. Greg also mentioned, yes, I have a pretty lengthy period of time in the Air Force. First of all, in a policing role. I joined the military police because at the time I applied for Queensland Police, and you needed obviously a university degree, of which I don't have. I had life experience, but I didn't have a uni degree. So I didn't make it into the Queensland Police, which just, you know, made me more determined to find another path to go. So I joined Air Force Police, and look, it was a great job. The training that we undertook was the equivalent of what the Queensland Police were doing anyway. So it set myself on a really good foundation for my investigative skills, and I suppose crime scene type stuff that I was doing as well. And I didn't think that I'd ever really use it that much, but I had an awesome career within the Air Force. So I was only permanent for 3 years. But during that time, as Greg mentioned, I did have a gentleman who was rather nasty in my presence with a butcher's knife, who wanted to end my life. It was a fair bit of actual tactical communication, to believe it or not, of which helped de-escalate that situation with the gentleman, so that he didn't punch some holes in me and make my day unpleasant. But I worked to build a heavy rapport with this guy during the interaction, to be able to keep him at a level of safety where eventually I got back up and we were able to obviously subdue and handcuff and take this guy away. He was a civilian, so he wasn't a RAF member. He had a lengthy criminal history. He had been in and out of jail for actually stabbing people. So when I kind of found that out, I was kind of quite surprised with myself how I handled that on the day, and obviously the months and years as it passed, as he kind of flared up every now and again in my psyche. The big thing, I suppose, that I took away from the Air Force is that it a lot of the time it's the people that are around you is what makes or breaks your learning ability. And I understand that you guys at the moment are obviously in that learning phase, doing the training around becoming an investigator. But if you think about what the basis of an investigator is, or a good compliance officer is generally a person who's searching for the truth around something, no matter what field you're in, whether you're government, private investigator, so forth. It's generally starting off with that there is a problem that has an answer need to be found. And I think that the basis to start off with in Cert 4, I think is such a great starting point for people who are either experienced and looking at broadening their horizons, or they're looking to get into the field and they want to start off at a really good point. So big thumbs up to everyone for, you know, joining this kind of path and looking at heading down, doing your Cert 4, because I really swear by it. We've put so many of our investigators through it, and they've learned so much when they've already may have thought that they knew everything anyway. I was in and out of investigative roles within fair trading. I kind of wanted to broaden my horizons as well around the investigative side. And so I thought about what kind of streams could I look at to broaden that or expand on my knowledge base as well. So I took up another training role within fair trading, which was directed around overhauling our induction course for our officers within fair trading, looking at our legislation and how or where it was still relevant to what we did. We actually look after about 69 pieces of legislation, so it's a massive task that we have. We have about 5 that are probably our day-to-day bread and butter, but we have a lot of the peripheral ones that come up every now and again. So having that knowledge basis around what we do and how we put it into play every day of the week was another foundation moment for me. I did that for just over 4 years. And then I moved into, as Greg mentioned, the complaint handling area. Now, this is where I really think I found my straps, because what I've started to realize is that what our staff actually said to people was, in fact, a lot of the reason why we had conflict in the workplace and why people were writing in and complaining to our ministers or our bosses and whatever about some of the things that our staff were saying. So I started to look at and work through perhaps what were some of our trigger words. So the words that we were using that were triggering people's either emotions or anger or whatever. And we worked together as a team to eliminate some of those things. Now, I'll give you some of those examples. We went away from saying the word complaint to we're making inquiries about something. Now, it doesn't sound a lot, but I'm actually removing the word complaint, because complaint for us, or for me especially, had a lot of blame attached to it. So we removed the word complaint, put in inquiries, and we started to see a de-escalation. We stopped, or if we're best we could, was saying, there may be consequences, because no one wants to hear that. People want to think that governments are going to help them at the end of the day. I also worked on, and they sound like just quirky things, but they worked because it's a mind over matter thing. All of my staff had signs at their desks that says "smile before you dial." Now, that was about setting the mindset for my staff before they picked up the phone and rang people. Now, in an investigative mindset, it's no different that when you go out to talk to people, what kind of mindset are you in when you get out of bed? You go out to talk to people. If you're in a bad mood, then it may have that mirror or reflection effect on that person. So do you really want to have conflict in the workplace simply because you may have been in a bit of a bad mood? So these are kind of all the things that I've picked up throughout the years, I suppose, bundled up, put into tactical communication, the company that I work for and work with. And the course that we run looks at helping the frontline staff, obviously, not get into conflict with their clients. One of the other things as well that I really learned out of the complaints area, or don't have the ability to be able to say to yourself, sometimes I need a break, I need to get away from it, whatever, because we get so involved and so entrenched with the work sometimes that we just simply can't see the forest from the trees, and they can have a detriment on your health, family environments, and so forth, and your working environments, and so forth, other colleagues. As I said, when I was at Transport, I spent a year in a small room with one other guy, up to our necks in paperwork. I was drinking about 15 cups of coffee a day, and I think about 2 packets of biscuits, to be quite honest. And yeah, our health at the end of that was really suffering. And we both had like the light bulb moment at the end of it when we'd finished and done the prosecution to say, hey, we need to get back on track and get ourselves a bit more healthy, because this lifestyle we're living is not good for us. So this is just a collection, I suppose, of a lot of years of doing jobs that are either very much heavily aligned with investigative practices, whether it's called a compliance officer or whatever. It was still certainly I was always in investigative type roles, or I've been in roles where I've had the ability to be able to influence how our investigators are molded and then come out and be better on the other side. So I'm happy to, I don't want to bang on about myself, obviously, for 40 minutes or whatever. So I'm happy, Greg, if people want to start to, if there are any questions, mate, throw them out there, and I'll see whether I can answer them.
So, yeah, I mean, it's fascinating what you say, and you talked a lot about quirky things, which they are, yes, they are quirky, but in combination, would you agree they add to a big, like, it's all about your communication style. Now, you mentioned that you know, the smile before you dial. I love it. So a lot of these, well, some of these students on here are doing the Cert 3 in investigative services.
Okay. Yep.
So that's what they'll, and some are doing the Cert 4, but some are doing the Cert 3. So that's what they'll get their PI license at the end of it. Now, what they're going to be doing, and you could probably talk to this, even though you may not have ever done it, is going out and interviewing insurance claimants. Now, there's an awful lot of tension and pressure and aggression from claimants, because the moment they turn up, it's on. You know what I mean? And not only claimants, but witnesses to, you know, traffic accident or personal injury matters. So what advice can you sort of give them? I mean, the smile before you dial is fantastic, but they're going to be coming up, as soon as they turn up, the people's backs are going to be up, because they're from the insurer. Well, they are from the insurer, but they're from, a lawyer, but from the insurer. So what sort of advice can you give them in terms of what to say and how to, I guess, talk a bit about building rapport in that as well?
Yeah, most definitely. Look, it took me a long time to realise it, but building rapport with people, no matter what job you're doing, is not that difficult a task to do. Okay, we are often frightened about talking to people, especially when we're in a compliance or an authoritative type role. I always start out with, I just introduce myself. Hi, I'm Jason from such and such. I try not to be overly bearing in my my introduction. As I said, I have worked on changing some of the words that we use. So if, for instance, you know, if we were going out to say, talk to someone who perhaps had been ripped off for a dodgy motor vehicle, I understand, probably to rewind it back a bit, if you understand the driving force or the driving emotion behind why people may be angry in the first place or confrontational to you, then you've kind of won the battle. So if you're, or half the battle, if you're going out to do, say, insurance interview or whatever, think about how would you feel if you're in that same kind of situation? And I use the terminology walk a mile in someone else's shoes. So if you've got a client that's there, they're quite upset because maybe the vehicle's been written off or whatever, you know, start out with something that's not related to what it is. You know, how long have you lived in the area for? You know, have you got children? Starting to build, I suppose, on just those normal human interactions that you would with any other stranger that you would meet. Bearing in mind, yes, you've got a job to do. I'm not taking away from that or watering that down, but I've just kind of found that just throwing out a few, you know, basic, really easy questions at the beginning of an interview, kind of just, they're almost like icebreakers for people. And reading the room as well, that yes, you're going to go in with people who are tense. No one likes to be in an interview at all, okay? I would often as well, even doing record of interviews with people, how are you going? Is the seat comfortable you're in? Would you like a glass of water? I never give people coffee, hot drinks, because I don't want it thrown on me, but would you like a glass of water? Okay, is the temperature of the room fine for you? Do you want me to turn it up or down? And what it is distractionary techniques as well, to get that person not thinking about for a split second why they're there. Okay, what we're here for today, hey, do you understand what the process is going to be? And explaining the process, maybe not in intimate detail, but from beginning to end, to say, hey, look, how about we work through the initial incident that happened, and then I'll get some information, because there's going to be a lot of stuff that you're going to give me. And I don't want to miss anything for starters, because it's all important to you. And what I like to try and do, I suppose, at no matter whether or not it's a person that I might end up prosecuting, sending a massive fine to, or previous jobs to possible incarceration, I want to make that person feel relaxed, because you're not going to get information out of a person who's uptight and bound up. You know, it's like when you used to get sent to the headmaster's office in school, you know, you didn't want to say anything because you're all bound up. But putting that person at ease is one of my biggest pieces of advice in the very first probably 5 minutes. The first probably 40 minutes of the course that I run is about me. I don't call it introductions. It's about me just getting to know the people I'm going to spend 7.5 hours with, building rapport. I get them to write their names out. I ask them generally three questions that I just bang out to them, and I get a wealth of information. And then from there, I can pull threads throughout the day. And I've got a really good ability after 3 years of being in counterintelligence to listen to conversations and get little pieces of the people, and then I can weave that into a conversation. I heard a lady say this morning that she'd worked in the bank. She was talking to another person, and then about halfway through the day, I said to her, hey, what bank did you actually work in? And she said, how do you know I worked in a bank? And I said, oh, didn't you mention it before? And she went, oh, I must have. So it didn't make it feel like I was eavesdropping on her conversation. It just made it then feel like it flowed. So yeah, that's my really biggest piece of advice, is not go in there like you. I see so many compliance officers go in there. They've got their new shiny badge and, they're all authoritative, and they just want to stamp their mark and they get nowhere. I've mentored staff, I've mentored compliance officers, mentored investigators, people in the military, and I go, hey, we're all people at the end of the day. These people have made a mistake, or we're about to help these people out of a situation they don't want to be in. Because I can say, if you're talking about insurance stuff, no one wants to be in a car crash. No one wants a house burnt down or a break and enter. But you may just have to go out there, get that information, but put the person at ease from the very, very first point, and it will make your job a lot easier. Okay. All right. Cool. Next one, Greg. Have we got another one?
Yeah. Larissa asks, have you always been upfront with introductions as to what you're doing, or would you pretend to be someone else?
Larissa, it probably would depend on what job I was doing. I just briefly mentioned then, I did 3 years of counterintelligence within the Air Force, which counterintelligence is watching the people who watch us, okay, to make sure that we don't have a great deal of threat associated around our staff. And mainly, it was keeping people at arm's length from us. So there were occasions, where I would go covertly we'd go into pubs and whatever, Friday night, watch what our staff were doing. It's pretty easy to pick Air Force people, short hair and whatever, look at mine. And look at perhaps what the criminal elements may have been around in that place. So it was probably no different than doing undercover police work, but we just had a kind of different emphasis that it was threat detection to people that may have been wanting something from our staff to get on the base, whether it was weapons, information, intelligence, and so forth. In other roles I've done, I've worn uniforms. So up front, people would know who I was when I was in transport. Certainly, I wore a uniform, had a patch on the side. It showed who I was. I drove a car with big purple lights on the roof. However, towards the end of my career, I'd be like pulling up a truck driver and, hey, mate, where have you come from today? Sydney. Okay, mate, what's the weather like? Oh, geez, it's been hot out here in Western Queensland. All right, mate, jump on down. Let's, get business underway. Have you got your logbook and license? So a lot of the time, it is very dependent on what you're doing. So, and I realise that in the private investigative world, there may be times where you want to be incognito, covert, whatever, and you don't want to be stand out. So introductions, obviously, they wouldn't come until they're necessary. But then there's other times when, certainly you got to stamp your mark, say who you are up front. We do covert stuff as well with liquor and gaming. I worked with them for about a year as well. And so we would quite often go into pubs and nightclubs and whatever, covert, whatever, sit around drinking drinks, not alcoholic, obviously, but watching people, making sure responsible service of alcohol. And then it wasn't until we'd actually seen a breach, we would then go in and identify ourselves and make ourselves known. So, so hope that answered the question.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Yes. Who's talking?
I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask, Anna, do you have any tips for a cover story, so to speak? Would you, if you're going to be working on a case for a period of time, I guess you have to assume a story that will hold up throughout the different people you interact with over a period of time. So would you have any recommendations? Like, I met one mate once in the Federal Police. He goes, I say I'm a an Arnott's biscuit designer or something. And I went, okay, so I don't know what.
Yeah. Look, I've never done deep undercover stuff. I've never done that kind of stuff. When I talk about we would go into places and watch or whatever. Yeah, look, the cover might have been as simple as that we were a couple of gym owners checking out a new establishment. We're in the area or whatever. Most of us look fit and healthy, so it wasn't a hard kind of cover to get away with. From what I understand from people that do that kind of work, they talk about the cover. You're going to create a cover that it has at least a fair amount of an element of truth to it, because there's nothing worse than having to remember a lot of lies. And if you're going to do that work and build that kind of cover around yourself to, blend in or whatever, there's got to be an element of truth that you can remember, because once you start to get put under pressure, and that's a lot of the stuff that I talk about on my course, once we start to get put under pressure and we might be confronted by someone who says, what are you doing here or whatever, you may resort back to simply being a human being once again and go into fight or flight scenario and have the amygdala hijack kick in, go back to survival mode, get all tongue-tied, forget what your cover is or whatever. But if you've got that element of truth within it, obviously it's an easier thing to keep spinning out, all right? So for me to say that I'm an Arnott's biscuit manufacturer or whatever your friend said, that's a fair mouthful to put across as well. And then I can guarantee that if I was a bit suspicious, I'd be starting to ask some fairly serious questions. But anyone could ask me anything about health and fitness, and I could probably answer 99% of the questions. So it wasn't probably a hard stretch for us to go, hey, yeah, we're just a couple of gym owners that are in town looking for a new space around here, if we were ever confronted for it. Hope that answered.
Okay, great. Think more questions coming through. I've got a quick one though from me.
Yeah.
You mentioned dealing with TMR, so truck drivers. So for those who don't know, you're pulling them up in a compliance investigative role for those on the thing. That's a very difficult job because they got their back up straight away. They just do not like you. And that'll be the same if you're a PI and you're going out to interview any claimant, or not witness so much, but certainly claimant, and certainly person who's maybe under investigation. They're going to have their back up straight away. So they'll be heightened and they'll be angry. What tips can you give to de-escalate that immediately? We've talked a little bit about empathy, but what sort of things can you say, and I guess what shouldn't you say to de-escalate them, to get them to calm down where they can make sense of what you're trying to say and why you're there?
Yeah. Look, my big takeaway, I suppose, for everyone that's here tonight is think about your own situational awareness. So I talk about during my course, who are we dealing with, where are we dealing with them, and what is the thing that we are dealing with them for? Okay, so to use TMR, my compliance work in transport, okay, yes, most of the time we were out Western Queensland, away from any help. There was only ever two of us there. So the persona, I suppose, and the language that I used with people most of the time, I tried to be friendly and open in my approach. At the time, I looked like a truck driver. I had a massive big red beard and a big long ponytail. Surprise, surprise, I don't have any hair now. But I tried as much as I could, I suppose, to look tribe-like to them, because a lot of their drivers, beards, whatever, looked a bit rough and ready. So it was just one way to kind of blend in just a little bit more. And as I mentioned just earlier, it's not so much about that you're the authority there with a badge and a shiny car and a uniform or whatever. We're all there to do jobs. And quite often, the opening remarks might be, why you blokes here again, or, a bit of swearing or whatever, and go, everyone's got to be employed or whatever. And I try to maybe just have a hint of humor around it, just to kind of break the ice with them. I mentioned as well, I might ask, where have you come from? What was the weather like, and so forth. I also think to myself that yes, empathy is a great word, But I also say to people as well, it's really hard to show empathy for a person if you've never been through that situation. So if you're going in to talk to, say, a claimant, as you've kind of mentioned, Greg, that might have been through perhaps one of the worst, situations of their life, whether it's a house burned down or a car crash or whatever, or some kind of injuries come out of it, saying to someone, hey, look, I understand. I believe that's one of the worst things that we can say. It's like saying to an angry person, calm down. Okay. Look, there could be wording such as, hey, look, that sounds really tough, the situation you're in. I've never experienced it. However, I'm here to help you today. Okay. And they're words that are just comforting almost in themselves to the person, that they know straight away. You're not there to feel sorry for them. You're not there to cuddle them or whatever. You're there to do a job. But you've kind of got a little bit of, I suppose, cushioning around the understanding or the circumstance that person has maybe found themselves in. Because, look, motor vehicle accident, they happen. You don't expect them to happen. You go through your driving life not ever wanting them to happen, but they may happen. It's like a house fire or a break and enter. We'd like to think we'd get through our life that those things never happen, but they do. And when we go out, if you've never experienced it, don't tell the person you have. I also never tell people that I'm sorry as well. It sounds hard, but I think it has a really strong emotional attachment then to the person. And then they think it's almost like trying to build a friendship with someone. I want to show empathy to the person. Yeah. I want them to know that, this is tough what you're going through, but I certainly don't want to, I'm not there to make friends with them or build that kind of relationship with them. That's what friends are for. All right. Yeah.
Great.
All right.
A couple more questions and great tips. Calm down's a great one. Yet, there's a saying in the history of calm down. No one who's ever said calm down has ever got anybody to calm down.
Yeah.
So, and that's because the reason for that is because you're telling somebody that they're not allowed to feel an emotion, which is normal, which is anger, for whatever reason, may not be normal. But Marianne asks, can you please provide any tips for influencing communications to avoid psychological harm in the workplace? We were talking about this before. Thank you.
All right. Marianne, gee, that's a broad one.
5 minutes.
Yeah, all right. Look, Marianne, psychological safety, I think, is something that has really just cropped up in the last, I reckon, about 18 months. I've started to see it. And of course, in Queensland, in April next year, it will become legislated into Workplace Health and Safety or Work Health and Safety Act. Okay. Look, we get, and I'm not 100% sure on what you're wanting out of your question, but look, conflict will come about sometimes at the most unexpected times, and it will catch you off guard. It can catch you off guard. But having a mindset, I talk a lot about situational awareness, who we're dealing with, what we're dealing with, and where we're dealing with them. If you keep those three things in the back of your mind always, because we do go out and in these kind of roles into people's houses, people's offices and whatever. So we're on their home turf, basically. So having just that little bit of situational awareness, where am I coming into a building, exit entry points, how do I make myself feel as safe as I can walking into that environment, so that I don't have to stress about other things when I'm there doing probably a very stressful job anyway. I hope that answered what you were wanting, Marianne. Is that what you were chasing?
You may answer, but I'll move on to another one.
Yeah, it is. Yep. Thank you. It helps. Great.
No worries. Thank you.
Angela asks, have you ever come across many people who get their back up from the sense of awareness of you're trying to build rapport with them? In other words, can building rapport sometimes make people paranoid or worse to come? I mean, I'll say don't fake it, like actually be genuine, because we're all people, but you no doubt agree with that.
Yeah. Look, I think if you can show that it's who you are, you're genuine in your approach to the person. Look, if you get out of the car, hey, everybody, how's it going? Blah, blah, blah. People see through you. And human beings, I've learned over 27 years, have a fairly high level of intuition. And, as we say, they can see through the BS detectors. sometimes investigative work is a hard slog, and you don't win every battle. All right. So I'm very, very clear about that. Some days you will just go out to talk to a person. You don't expect that there's going to be conflict, and bang, you get it. All right. And you don't expect it. Other days you might go out thinking that it's going to be confrontational, and it's a breeze. I think it's the very thing that keeps a lot of investigators in the job. It's almost like chasing that adrenaline for some people. But yeah, it's certainly, if you are aware of the situation you're going into, it really plays a big part on your own mindset. And I said in the very first part, your own mindset is what plays and can make yourself paranoid a lot of the time about, oh, is this person going to be nice to me, or are they not going to be nice to me, or whatever. And look, at the end of the day, we're not there to make friends with people. We're there to do a job. And if someone is aggressive or whatever, you've got choices. Detach yourself, move away from the situation, because you don't go to work to be obviously injured. Unfortunately, you're in a role, or you've chosen a profession where it's at a higher level, obviously, of conflict. But sometimes, yeah, it's just about the way that you communicate with people. You're going to either win the battle or you're not. Okay, that's probably as simple as I can put it across.
Excellent. Now, Jeremy asked, to elaborate Angela's question, what if the interviewer's rapport with them is unsuccessful? So I guess, what do you do? So I guess, you do genuinely build that rapport, and It's just not going to work. What's the next steps?
Yeah. Look, as I've just said, I'll reiterate it. You win some, you lose some. You're not going to win over every person that you deal with. And if your attempt to build rapport with person falls flat, go back to your professional mode, move through the business, do what you have to do. All right. It may be unpleasant for you. It may be uncomfortable for both of you to go through it. It may not be great, but that's the territory that we live in. Look, 90% of the people that I've dealt with throughout my career have been pretty good. Look, I've had my ups and downs. The 10% are the ones that I've remembered, have been the bad ones. The 90% I've forgotten. But really, when I think about it now, later in my life, I probably should be remember the 90% of the people that were great and that I had really good reputation with, or built great rapport with. And then probably looked at the 10% and just said, how could I probably improve those areas? So yeah, the takeaway for that question, once again, is you win some or you lose some, be professional and move forward.
That's a great point. I think also, like, there's always a line in the sand. So tactical communications, I'm sure you'll agree with me, is great, but there's always that line where if it's crossed, you disengage. And disengagement may be running the other way as fast as you can, cover concealment or all those things. But obviously, your, as I said right at the very start, your mantra, I guess, is to bring people home safely. And tactical communication can do that for you, but again, sometimes it can't.
Yeah. Look, at the end of the day, we go to work to earn money, to live our lives on the outside. We don't go to work to be, assaulted, yelled at, screamed at, whatever. It comes with the territory of, what the occupation that we've all chosen. And you've kind of learned to roll with the punches, but you've got to have things externally to be able to, I suppose, diffuse yourself from maybe the anger that'll build up in yourself, or the resentment of people. Don't become jaded and bitter like many people that I've met throughout my career. It's have outside interests, do things that make you happy and smile at the end of the day. Keeping your own mental health healthy. As I said, I do that through keeping physically fit, talking to people if I've got issues or whatever, to keep my mind as clean and clear as I can. Trying to just work on, I suppose, just being better at what I do in that investigative work. And if I can, mentoring people and helping people along the way to be better investigators. My biggest takeaway, I suppose, is the communication style. And I'm honestly believing that human beings, we are devolving in the way we communicate. So much is around, text and emails and stuff like that. if you have the ability to be able to talk face to face to people, and I think you can tell I'm a fairly confident speaker, it goes a long, long way to being able to communicate with people, because they see that you're confident, that you know what you're talking about. Knowledge is power is probably a really easy way to put it. And when you have confidence, or you exude confidence, people as well get put at ease. Okay, so if you're dealing with people that are in high stress situations, like you talked about the PIs, you go in, you know what you're talking about, you're confident, not cocky. You have the ability to be able to show empathy as well. It'll go a long way to getting that person on board. Don't worry about the people that aren't coming on board. Worry about the ones that you've got on board, because they're going to be your all-day goals. Okay.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I guess some of our students are also interested in doing surveillance work as a PI.
Okay.
And
yeah.
What that brings obviously is aggression from people that they're surveilling. Well, hopefully not.
Yeah.
But also people that see them sitting in a car for 6 hours in their street. You know what I mean? And
yeah.
It's really interesting. You need to have these skills to be able to deal with that. What advice could you give them? You know, let's say you were sitting in a car watching a subject for 4 hours, and old mate comes out of his house because he's had an insurance claim knocked back before, and he's all cranky, and he's having a go at you. Like, what practically could you say and do?
Yeah, look, it probably goes back to what one of the other ladies asked me before about the cover story. If you look, any neighbourhood, anywhere, if you're parked in a car at the front of a house for a long time, you're going to draw some kind of attention. And if you're in an area where there's nosy enough neighbours, they may come out, knock on the window and ask you what you're doing or whatever. Look, it could be as simple as that you say, hey, look, I'm a street photographer, and I'm waiting for the perfect shot of sun up, sun down, sun up, sun down, and I've got to just sit in my car for hours. I'm working. This is like my mobile office or whatever. Oh, sorry if I've disturbed you. I can move up the road if it's causing you a problem. And being non-threatening about it, because if you're doing surveillance well, you should basically be undetectable, okay? There's an art form around it. It's why people specialize in it. And you should be able to blend into any kind of environment. So, you know, if you're in a high office staff environment, you know, where people are wearing, you know, suits and whatever, and you're dressed in your baggy t-shirt and runners and whatever, taking photos of people, you're going to draw attention to yourself. So blend into your environment and go and do a bit of recce beforehand of where you're going to go. But have some kind of an explanation of why you're sitting there in your vehicle for a long time. Look, at the moment, it'd be easy to say, hey, I just was made homeless, and I'm sitting here contemplating what I'm going to do and how I'm going to find somewhere to live. Okay, as simple as that. They're not going to then probably even question you any further if you're sitting there for another couple of hours. All right, you might make a great friend out of them. They might bring you a cup of tea or a coffee or whatever. Yeah.
Jeremy's asking, have you ever used a tracking device on a vehicle? I'm not sure that's related to what we're talking about, but
the quick answer is no, Jeremy. I am really terrible with technology, and I probably, if I would have wanted to know where someone was going, I would have followed them in a car, probably old days. Yeah, but there's great technology out for that kind of surveillance stuff these days. Yeah, ask someone else. That's not my gig. Yeah.
Yes is my answer, but I can talk to you about that a bit further later. I guess just to finish up, you know, a lot of the students, you know, they may want to learn more about this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Where can they go to be a better communicator? Because a better communicator is going to make them a better investigator, whether it's a private investigator or in government, isn't it? Where can they? Who can they look to? Where can they go to learn more about this stuff?
Look, there's several ways you can do it. Like, you can look for companies like ours that we run courses on it. And obviously, yeah, I'm happy to advertise who I am. So Tactical Communications. I aligned myself in the workplace with people that I thought were great communicators, that were confident and weren't just there to do the job. Okay. And there's a lot of people out there like that. I had the pleasure of working with a guy in Toowoomba for the last 4 years of my transport career. I learned so much from him. I learned a lot about technology. I learned about interviewing techniques. We were great communicators together. It was almost like we read each other's mind towards the end. It was like Starsky and Hutch kind of stuff. Within the workplace, look at who might be a good mentor, and don't be afraid to ask someone, would you be interested in mentoring me? I'd love to be mentored. People it flatters their ego that someone wants to learn off of them. I always like it when people ask, hey, can I ask your advice about this or whatever? Communication is a skill that can be learned, but I've also found as well that a lot of the times it's already just inherently within you. I was lucky that I grew up with, my dad was a cop, and he was a traffic cop as well. So he talked to a lot of people throughout the day. And we just, as a family, we got the gift of the gab off of my dad, and his father was a great communicator as well. So it's kind of in my blood. But it is something that you can overcome if you keep working at it. If you want to go into surveillance type stuff, obviously, you got to be quick on your feet, okay? Because people will see through you very quickly. So you got to be able to communicate. And as I said, if someone come and knocked on my window, I'd say, hey, look, I'm waiting for the Blue Parrot of South Australia to land on that power line over there. I've heard that it's coming in the next 2 days, and that's why I'm camping here. Okay, think on your feet. And if you're in that kind of PI type surveillance type role. But normal, interviews with people, put time in. That's where you're going to learn your trade. Speak to people. Don't be afraid. I do this stuff on the bus all the time. Just talk to strangers. One, it gives me the ability to learn something new about someone I've never known before. And two, I get to practice my communication skills. It's the very reason I love doing these kind of things as well. It's why I love the course that I run. Every Thursday, I get to meet 20 new people, and I get to talk about stuff, and I get to talk about stuff that I'm passionate about. So dig in, speak to strangers. Don't speak to them online. Get out and meet people, because if you're going to be in this kind of job, inevitably you're going to talk to people. And as I said, we're devolving in our communication skills as human beings. So lead the new charge and become the new communicators, because believe it or not, we're pretty sought after. If you can hold a conversation, if you can talk confidently, and if you can relay a story, and I love to tell stories, people will come and seek your advice for stuff. So be one of those people. Be a forerunner. Don't be a shrinking violet. Okay, have the confidence to talk to people.
Fantastic advice, Jason. Okay, we're going to end it up now. I'll spend another 5 minutes talking, and happy to start. I'd love you to stay online just while we finish up. But I guess without giving too much away for all the students, on Wednesday, I talked to the CEO of one of the biggest, if not the biggest, investigative firms in Australia. And you know what his number one issue was with investigators? That they can't ask the right questions.
Yeah.
So there's number one point for all of you. And what Jason's been talking about, not only de-escalation, but it's about the ability to ask the right questions. It's that simple, but it's not that simple because it's a learnt skill. So I'll talk more about that into the future, but that was that person's biggest issue with trainee investigators. So we're going to work very hard, certainly at PICA, to teach you how to ask the right questions, and all this sort of stuff is about that. So just in finishing off, look, I just do want to thank Jason so much for joining us. He's taken an hour out of his busy week. I think he was down at the southern end of the Queensland today, training a whole heap of people in tactical communication. So look, he lives and breathes this stuff. I'm really grateful to have him come and talk to you about it. I encourage you to learn more about it. I mean, yes, you can probably do a course if you want, but you don't need to these days. You can. YouTube's great. There's lots of resources on the internet. There's lots of people out there that can teach you the sort of things about de-escalation that will help you in your job as an investigator. So Jason, I just want to again really humbled to have you here, and thank you for coming in and talking to the students. I'm getting thanks and great talks, and this guy's brilliant from all the students. So thanks very much.
Yeah.
In finishing up, guys, I just want to reiterate a couple of things to the students. The career coaches. So whether you're doing the Cert 3 or Cert 4, you're going to have a career coach. So those doing the Cert 3 will have TJ, who you know now. I'm calling them career coaches. It's actually really important because we're not just here to run you through a course and send you on your way. We want to get you to succeed and give you a career pathway. So we'll be running weekly. I'm not sure if TJ set it up yet, but weekly webinars like this, where you can jump on and just ask your assessor anything. Okay, so look out for that. That'll be happening very soon. I'm doing the Cert 4 at the moment. Some of you may have met Dave, who's left as well, but I'm doing that for now. So I'll be doing that as well. Just the other thing I wanted to add was that just make sure all inquiries come through the portal. It's really important to us to make sure we keep a record of all your questions and inquiries that we have. But reiterate that we are absolutely here to help you. Our goal is to get you not only trained, but make you a better investigator. So there's a lot of things happening in the background, which I'm really excited I'll share with you into the future. Well, that's tonight's professional development webinar. Thanks so much for joining us. Hope you enjoyed. Stay tuned for next month. I don't know who we're going to have. It'll be someone exciting as well. Thanks again, Jason. So appreciative that you can, give us an hour of your time to teach. I know you're passionate about this stuff, so hopefully.
No worries, Greg. And look, and to all your students, I'm more than happy. I'm on LinkedIn. If you want to send me a connection, I'm more than happy to accept anyone who sends me a connection. And you can check out and see some of the crazy stuff that I do.
Yeah, and you post a lot of informational stuff as well on there, so it's really great.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Greg. It's always a pleasure to get on board and help emerging people in this industry.
Yeah, thank you. So appreciate it. All right. Thanks, Jason, and thanks, guys. I'll see you online.
No worries. Thanks, mate.
Bye.